Under God by William C. Hendricks. Chapter 1, Government and Authority. Important ideas to look for. God has the supreme right to authority. Everyone is under authority. The home, school, church, and state are spheres of authority. The spheres of authority change in influence as you grow and mature. Authority, a basic idea of government. We read in Romans 13:1, everyone must submit to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. This text says that God established governments, and that everyone must be obedient to them. When God institutes or ordains government, he gives authority to it. Authority is the right to be heard, to direct, to command, and to be obeyed. God, as creator and guide of all things, has this right of supreme authority for two reasons. First, it is inherently a part of his divinity. Because he is God, he has the right to be heard, to direct, to command, and to be obeyed. Authority is one of the attributes of his being. Without the right of supreme authority, God could not be God. Second, God has authority over the world because he made it. It is his. Psalm 24:1 tells us, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it." The world and all who live in it, all people are God's creatures, whether they admit it or not. When you invent something, you patent it and control your invention. In a similar way, God has the right to ordain governments among people because he created them. Spheres of authority. Everyone is under authority. You too are under government, and during your lifetime you are affected by government in several spheres: the home, the school, the church, and the state. To each sphere you are granted your loyalty, your faithfulness, and your obedience as they are expected and required. For each of us governmental beings in the home, God gave the fifth commandment: honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Exodus 20:12. By this commandment, God ordered that children must respect the authority of their parents. This authority is also under God. Parents have the responsibility to train a child in the way he should go. Proverbs 22:6. We know from the story of Eli and his sons that God is not pleased with parents who fail to do so. This responsibility included helping children to build habits of personal devotion and prayer, as well as teaching them how to live among their fellow human beings in a Christian way. We see then that children must obey their parents, because God directed that parents should exercise authority in the home. Parents in turn must be very careful how they use this authority, for they must do so according to God's will. In early childhood, you knew only the authority of your parents in the home. As you grew older, you had more freedom from parental authority and more personal responsibility toward God and your fellow men. This responsibility increases until finally you become the authority in a new home, one of your own, which also must be dedicated to God's praise. When you were about 4 or 5 years old, you met a new authority: school. We say that the school is a sphere of authority because as a pupil you are under its rules. You must give your loyalty, your faithfulness, and your obedience to your school because it also is under God. Teachers must use authority not for their personal wishes, but rather in obedience to God. Teachers receive their authority from God, and he will hold them responsible for the way in which they use that authority. God has entrusted the training of children to their parents. Some parents who wish their children to receive a Christian education form society and build Christian schools. Such parents share some of their parental authority and responsibility with the Christian teachers they hire. Several other kinds of private schools are also in operation in our nation. Many churches in our nation maintain parochial schools for the education of the children and the young people in their membership. In these schools, the church assumes the primary responsibility for the type of education given. Parents who do not desire or cannot obtain a Christian school education for their children and do send them to some other type of parochial or private school allow the state to educate their children in public schools. Public education, as all education, is very necessary if the state is to have citizens who are able to vote intelligently, to carry out the duties of citizenship. Government in a Christian school represents the authority of both the home and the state, because the state makes laws for all schools. Although the influence of the school continues through life, the sphere of authority of the school ends upon graduation. We are also under the authority of the Church. This sphere of authority is the greatest in the life of the Christian. The authority that God ordains in the home, the school, and the state concerns us only if this life or a part of it. But the authority of Christ, as it is represented in the Church, continues through this life and into eternity. In a special way, Christ is the source of authority in the sphere of government because he is King of the Church. All authority in heaven and on earth have been given to me, Matthew 28:18. According to Scripture, the state may not make laws that prevent people from worshiping and serving God according to their consciences. God has kept the heart of man for himself. He has not turned it over to earthly governments. This does not mean that the thoughts of the heart are outside of law. No, it's exactly here that the authority of the Church in our lives may be seen. The Church is the earthly manifestation of the Lord's heavenly kingdom. The Church on earth proclaims God's word and celebrates the sacraments ordained by God. As we grow older and become professing members of the Church, its authority in our lives increases. We do not have a vote in making the laws of God's kingdom, for he has made them himself. He has the power to do this, for he is sovereign. He has absolute authority, for he is God. No one can say to God, "What have you done?" Daniel 4:35. Here, too, we must pledge our loyalty, faithfulness, and obedience, not out of fear, but out of love for him. Besides the home, the school, and the Church, one other large area of authority that governs us is the state, or civil government. Just as God provides for the authority of parents in the home, the authority of the teacher in the school, the authority of the consistory or council in the Church, so he also establishes civil governments among men to promote law and order. It is true that people have misused the authority that God has entrusted to them. You will remember the story of Jezebel when she asked Ahab, "Is this how you act as king over Israel?" 1 Kings 21:7. She thought that because Ahab was king, he could do anything he wanted to do. But the rules of the past were not free to do just as they pleased, nor are the rules of today, for the authority that God has entrusted to the state or civil governments of the earth must also be used according to his laws. As you grow up and mature, the authority of the home diminishes and political authority increases in your life. For example, when you obtain a driver's license, a whole new area of civil authority, the traffic laws, automobile drivers, enters to your life. Remember, then, to be loyal, faithful, and obedient to the governing authorities. When you grow older, you may enter military service of some type, or business, or profession. Perhaps you will buy property or build a home. In all of these activities, you will be expected to assume the full responsibility of adult citizenship in the sphere of civil government. These four spheres of authority, the home, the school, the Church, and the state, all reflect God's sovereign authority. The authority that God gives to one sphere necessarily limits the authority of the others. The home may not do whatever it pleases because the authority of the school, the Church, and the state do not permit it to do so. The school may not do whatever it wishes because of the home, the Church, and the state limit its authority. We see then that although these four spheres of authority are partly independent or sovereign, they are in many ways interdependent. They all are ordained by God and are under his rule and care. It is not always easy to determine the point at which the authority of one sphere ends and the authority of another begins. This point is difficult to determine because the spheres of authority often overlap. For example, the home influences the school. The Church and the state, to some degree, control both the home and the school. Even though lines of authority are not always clear, we must remember that the basis of all authority is the same. The sphere of authority all rests inside the circle of God's authority. There are no blank spaces. Some citizens act as though there were blank spaces among the four spheres of authority, where there is no government. These people may be well behaved in their homes and also in their schools. They may be sincere and well mannered in church, and they may drive carefully when a patrol car is following them. But when persons in authority are temporarily absent, parents away from the home, teachers are out of the room, church service is not yet begun, or a patrol car is nowhere in sight, they display very poor citizenship. These people prove that they do not really understand what allegiance means. The Bible commands us to submit to the governing authorities. That is to obey authority in every sphere that God has placed over us. This is not always easy to do because we are rebellious by nature, and we would rather not obey anyone. There is, however, one condition under which we may justly disobey the governing authorities that God has appointed for us. We may disobey a law of our earthly authorities or rules if in obeying it we would break the law of God. Then, regardless of the punishment we might receive, we must say as Peter did, we must obey God rather than men. Acts 5:29. Our obedience to the authorities that God has placed over us must not be blind and thoughtless response. Rather, we must consider the requirements carefully. We must remember that our obeying the governing authorities, we are first of all obeying God, who appointed them to rule over us. True citizenship can only be Christian citizenship, for every earthly authority is always under God. Do you remember what you have read? Number 1. What is authority? 2. Give 2 reasons why God has the right to supreme authority. 3. List the 4 main spheres of authority. 4. How do the spheres of authority change for you as you grow older? For further thought, number 1. In what way does the authority of the school and the state overlap in your life today? Number 2. If the laws of the Bible and the laws of your nation disagree, where must your allegiance be placed? 3. Why are there no blank spaces where there is no authority over us? 4. If we believe that all governing powers are of God, Romans 13:1, how do we explain that some governments limit religious freedom or forbid their people to worship God? What should Christians do in such countries? Number 5. Are demonstrations, such as anti-abortion marches, proper means for a Christian to protest injustice? 6. If you believe a law is wrong, do you have the right to break the law? Why? 7. Tell which sphere of authority should govern these situations. A. A person disobeys a speed law on the highway. B. A girl talks back to her mother. C. 2 children are fighting on the school ground during recess. D. A boy who is too young to obtain a driver's license drives a car on the highway. E. A man insults his neighbor. F. A person borrows a hymn book from church and never returns it. G. A woman parks her car in a no parking zone before attending church. H. A boy throws a ball through the living room window of his own home. I. Breaking fire regulations, the ushers fill the church aisles with chairs. J. A person uses obscene language in the public place of business. Words to study: allegiance, attribute, authority, civil, inherent, institute, interdependent, mature, ordain, parochial, political, sovereign, sphere, and supreme.